I mean, every single day, millions of perfectly sane people willingly subject themselves to, well, isolation, financial stress, and just brutal emotional exhaustion.
Yeah.
And they do it on purpose.
Yeah, they really do.
Right. They pour thousands of hours into projects that offer absolutely no guarantee of a return.
Mm-hmm.
And today, we were doing a deep dive into a really profound piece of writing that argues, they actually don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Not because they are cursed or anything, but because for a certain type of person, creating is a fundamental survival mechanism.
And what's fascinating here is it's a profound shift in perspective. Usually when we talk about the creative process, the conversation revolves around, I don't know, ambition or career strategy.
Or like finding an audience, right?
Exactly, building a platform.
Yeah.
But the ideas we are looking at today in the source material, they strip all of that away. They look past the lifestyle choices and the productivity hacks, and they examine the absolute psychological bedrock of why we make things.
And if you are listening to this right now, whether you are a writer, a coder, a designer, a musician, a builder, you know the exact toll we are talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
You know the delayed recognition. You know what it feels like to look at your bank account and wonder why you didn't just take the safe, normal path.
The path of least resistance.
Right. And the piece we're diving into addresses that late-night exhaustion directly. But it doesn't offer, like, generic motivational cliches.
Yeah.
There is no believe in yourself and the money will follow here.
No, definitely not, because empty cheerleading just doesn't survive contact with reality.
Yeah.
Those cliches evaporate the moment a creator faces, say, their third year of silence from the market or their 50th rejection letter. The author we're studying today looks right at the hardship of the creative life and completely refuses to flinch.
They really do.
They suggest that the goal isn't to finally find a good answer to the question, why do I create? The real shift happens when you move past that entirely and arrive at a much more durable realization, which is, why would I not?
Why would I not? I love that. But to understand how a creator actually reaches that point of absolute resolve, where why would I not becomes the baseline, we first have to look at what they leave behind. Because nobody begins there.
No.
When you first start making things, your motivations are usually, well, entirely different.
They're almost always tied to something external. Like early on, you are driven by the desire for recognition or maybe a sense of belonging to a specific scene.
Or just the need for validation.
Right. You want to prove to your parents that you aren't wasting your life. Or you want to prove to your peers that you actually have talent. And those are incredibly powerful forces.
They provide a ton of thrust. I actually think about this like the massive booster stages on a space rocket.
Oh, that's a great way to picture it.
Yeah, because when you first launch into a creative life, you need those explosive early motivations to get you off the ground and push you through the thickest, most terrifying layers of atmospheric resistance. You need the hunger for a gallery show or a record deal just to overcome the initial fear of failure.
But the architecture of a rocket demands that those boosters eventually fall away. I mean, if you try to take those heavy, fuel-guzzling tanks all the way into deep space, their sheer weight will just drag the ship down.
Yeah, you wouldn't make it.
Exactly. And the same is true for a creator. Over decades, systems collapse, industries restructure, markets completely change. So if your drive is permanently anchored to external validation, your capacity to create becomes incredibly fragile.
Which really marks a massive transition in the life cycle of an artist. The early motivations they have to burn up and drop into the ocean, leaving only the core module. And the text describes that core module as a durable, stripped-down need to respond to the world through making.
Yes.
It characterizes this as a shift from expression to orientation. And I want to pause on that, because we are taught from day one that art is fundamentally about expressing yourself.
We are, yeah. But expression implies an audience. It requires an external receiver. When you are expressing yourself, you're projecting something outward, hoping someone catches it, understands it, and, applauds it.
Right, hoping for a reaction.
But orientation functions completely differently. Orientation is how you position yourself in space. It is a navigational tool. Think about a compass. A compass doesn't care if anyone is looking at it.
You just work.
It simply points north so you don't walk off a cliff. For the seasoned creator, making things shifts from being a performance to being a compass. It becomes the mechanism by which they orient themselves to a chaotic, unpredictable universe.
So if creating becomes an internal compass rather than a public performance, we need to look at the actual mechanism of how that works. Like, how does making a chair or writing a chapter of a book or even structuring a database actually orient a human mind?
Right.
The source uses a very specific biological metaphor here, arguing that creating is how complexity is metabolized.
Yes, metabolized. And metabolism is not a conscious lifestyle choice, right? It is a biological imperative. Your physical body takes in raw material like food and breaks it down.
It has to survive.
Exactly. It extracts what is useful, expels the waste, and turns the rest into cellular structure and energy. The author argues that the creative mind does the exact same thing, but with the experience of living.
So we take in the raw, chaotic data of life, a breakup, a global pandemic, the overwhelming sensory noise of living in a modern city. All of that raw material is chaotic and formless.
It's just noise.
Right. And the creator's brain acts as a metabolic engine. They process that chaos, break it down, and build a structure out of it.
And that structure might be a symphony or it might be a perfectly cultivated community garden. The medium doesn't really matter. The psychological mechanism is what matters.
The act of doing it.
Yes, when you impose order on raw materials, you are literally altering your own brain state. You are taking the immense, crushing pressure of existence and giving it a manageable form.
Okay, I understand the biology metaphor, but I have to push back a little on the necessity of it.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's look at a real-world scenario. Say a writer has been struggling for a decade. The pressure is way too high. The financial return is totally non-existent. If they just say, "I'm done," and they get a quiet 9-to-5 job in middle management, the chaos doesn't necessarily eat them alive, right?
Wow.
I mean, people walk away from their art all the time and they seem perfectly fine. Why not just turn off the engine?
That assumes the engine has an off switch. For the type of individual this text is really addressing, stopping the work doesn't lead to peace.
It doesn't.
No. Think about what happens when you turn off the release valve on a pressure cooker while the heat is still on. Or, perhaps a better analogy, think about what happens to a human muscle in zero gravity.
Oh, like astronauts.
Exactly. When a muscle stops encountering resistance, it doesn't just rest, it atrophies. It loses its structural integrity completely.
But I mean, their life still goes on. They still pay their mortgage.
They do. The heart keeps beating, the bills get paid. But according to the document, the life no longer coheres. It loses its internal logic. The author is adamant that for a creator, without this constant process of metabolizing complexity, the world becomes fundamentally flatter.
Flatter.
Yeah, perception dulls. Experience loses its depth. The static of life just builds up because there is no mechanism to process it.
Okay, I see the distinction you're drawing there. It's not that life ends, it's that life loses its texture.
Yes, the texture is gone.
And there is no substitute for that process. You can't replace the act of metabolizing complexity with, like, a promotion at the bank or a nicer car or higher social status.
You really can't, which is why the text describes creating as a refusal to become numb. It is how these individuals remain in integrity with themselves. They stay fully awake to the world, rather than retreating into the safety of an anesthetized, disconnected life.
The idea of living without anesthesia, that brings us to the absolute heaviest part of this reality. Because staying fully awake to the world is terrifying.
It's incredibly painful sometimes.
Yeah. If creating is the ultimate way to stay aligned and awake, we have to acknowledge the immense toll it takes to live that way.
The cost is staggering. Because if you are actively metabolizing the world, it means you have to let the world in. You have to feel the uncertainty, the grief, the frustration, and the friction, and you have to sit with it long enough to give it form.
The source outlines these stark realities, and I think it's important to list them so you, the listener, hear this acknowledged directly.
Definitely.
Creating demands relentless attention. It requires immense emotional exposure. It forces you to repeatedly, daily, choose uncertainty over safety. It involves deep, prolonged solitude. And again, it rarely guarantees any external reward. You are basically pouring your life force into a void.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you realize just how radical it is to accept those terms today. We live in a society that has built a massive infrastructure entirely dedicated to providing anesthesia. Our culture explicitly rewards the surface. It rewards quick returns, virality, doing the absolute minimum required to trigger a dopamine hit or gain some kind of external validation.
Yes, the entire modern ecosystem is basically about checking out when things get hard. Doom scrolling for hours, binge-watching content, hyper-consumerism. We are constantly offered ways to disconnect from the friction of reality.
Exactly. So against that backdrop, choosing to spend a year alone in a room writing a novel, or meticulously coding a piece of open source software that works beautifully just for the sake of it, is an active rebellion.
It really is.
It is an insistence on depth in a shallow world. To keep creating despite the exhaustion and the costs isn't merely a habit, it is a refusal to disengage.
The author describes making things as a lifelong commitment to engaging with the world without anesthesia. And that phrase really forces you to examine your own daily choices.
It's confronting.
It is. Because the creator looks at the pain, the constraints, the sheer noise of the modern world, and instead of reaching for a distraction, they say, no, I am going to feel this. I am going to process this through my own two hands.
And it takes a tremendous amount of courage. And I want to be clear, the text is not romanticizing.
Starving.
Exactly. There is nothing inherently noble about starving for your art. The point the author is making is much more pragmatic. For the creator, the alternative, living a flat, anesthetized, disconnected life, is simply a fate worse than the struggle.
Wow.
They don't choose the struggle because it's fun. They choose it because the alternative literally feels like death.
Which sets up the final and I think most empowering piece of this puzzle.
Yeah.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If a person is enduring the solitude, the lack of a guaranteed return, and the exhaustion, and they're doing it entirely without anesthesia, what is the ultimate payoff?
Right, what's the point?
Yeah, if it's not money, and it's not fame, what does the act of making fundamentally prove about our existence?
It proves that meaning is generated rather than received. This is the crux of the entire philosophy. So many people walk through life waiting for the universe to just hand them a purpose.
Like it's going to fall out of the sky.
Exactly. They want an authority figure or an institution or society at large to explain to them why they are here and what their life means.
We want a permission slip. We want someone to say, here is your role, here is your value.
But the act of creating completely inverts that dynamic. When you truly make something, when you take raw, disparate elements and impose a new reality onto them, you are generating meaning from scratch. You are proving, tangibly, that the world is not fixed.
Think about the psychology of that for a moment. You take a block of wood, and through your own physical effort and attention, you turn it into a table. Or you take a blank screen and you write a script that makes someone laugh. You have literally forced something into existence that did not exist before you arrived.
Yeah.
You have fundamentally altered your environment.
That is the ultimate proof of agency. And human beings require agency to stave off despair. When you prove that you can impact your environment, even under intense constraints, you realize you are not just a passenger on this ride. You are participating in a world that is still being shaped.
That answers a question that I think haunts a lot of artists. You know, you sit down to write a song about heartbreak and a voice in your head says, 1 million people have already written songs about heartbreak. Why should I bother writing another one? It's completely redundant.
It's only redundant if you think the value is entirely in the final product. But if the value is in the process of metabolizing your own experience, then it is never redundant. Every time you make something, even if the theme has been explored 1,000 times before, you are personally refusing to be just a spectator. You are asserting your own agency in that specific moment in time.
So we have traced this incredible arc today. We started with those explosive, heavy, early motivations, like the need for validation and applause.
The booster rockets.
Right, the booster rockets. And we looked at how those eventually burn away, shifting the creator's focus from outward expression to an internal compass of orientation. We examined the actual psychological mechanism of metabolizing chaos, taking the unbearable noise of life and giving it a structured form so that life can actually cohere.
We also confronted the brutal costs, the solitude, the exposure, the lack of return, and that intense cultural pressure to simply take the anesthesia and numb out.
So what does this all mean? We arrive at this fundamental truth. Creating is the ultimate proof of our own agency. It is the realization that we don't have to wait for meaning, we can generate it ourselves.
Yes.
It all points to one undeniable conclusion from our source material today. Creating is not a phase you're eventually going to grow out of. It is not a career strategy that you could just pivot away from when the market turns. And it is certainly not a luxury reserved only for people who have endless free time.
It is a lifelong commitment to living honestly and actively. And I think the most resonant part of this entire philosophy is how it resolves. It doesn't offer a Hollywood ending.
No, it really doesn't.
It doesn't promise that if you just persist through the pain, you will eventually win a Grammy or write a bestseller or achieve massive financial success. The universe doesn't owe you an audience just because you worked hard.
But, and this is crucial, it also doesn't leave you in despair. There's no nihilism here.
No, it leaves you with a quiet, unbreakable resolve. It is the deep internal understanding that regardless of the outcome, regardless of whether a million people see your work or absolutely no one ever sees it, you remain intimately connected to the world through the act of making.
The connection is the point.
Exactly. The chaos was structured, the complexity was metabolized, the meaning was generated, and nobody, no market shift, and no algorithm can ever take that away from you.
The internal alignment is achieved. You did the work. I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to take into your own creative life today. I want you to think about a specific project that you abandoned.
We all have one.
Oh, definitely. Maybe it's a half-written manuscript in a drawer, or a folder of code on your desktop, or a canvas just shoved in the back of a closet. Think about the project you walked away from because you realized it wasn't going to get the external recognition you originally hoped for, or maybe because it wasn't going to be commercially viable. What if you picked it back up today, not to finish it so you can sell it,
Right.
not to polish it for an audience, but simply to use the physical act of making it, to re-anchor yourself to the world? What area of chaos in your life right now is just waiting for you to give it structure?
That's a powerful question.
If this discussion hit home for you today, take that feeling of being understood, hold on to that quiet resolve, and go make something. Not because you have to prove anything to anyone, but because you are awake, you possess agency, and you absolutely refuse to live on anesthesia. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep shaping the world, and we will catch you next time.